The mother sets the tone. Reverend Anjuma.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Pastor Smart, for allowing me to be a part of tonight's conversation around our native son. The interesting thing about that kitchenette is that one time, me and my oldest son lived in a kitchenette apartment similar to that. It was a single,
Teach.
and
Teach.
I'm sorry.
Teach. Teach.
Oh, at one time we lived in a kitchenette apartment, much like that, um, and um, and you have nights sitting around. The kitchen is the living room. It was my son's bedroom,
Mm.
uh, and it was where company had to sit. So I understand that space very well. And we lived in that apartment for a couple of years. That was a very tough time for us financially, but God is faithful. Um, and even though my son at the time was a little boy, I do understand that mother's concern that things can get better. I believe that Bigger's mother at that time had a very traditional thought of the American dream. You know, get a job, improve things for your family.
Mm.
Uh, like a lot of families, the son, because we have so many African American families and Latino families where the father is not in the home, the sons often are put in position where they have to uh, help provide for the family, help provide for the mother, the grandmother, the younger siblings. And so Bigger Thomas's story, though it's an older story, is still very present even in our modern day.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think where we, with this mother, though, we might look at her and say, you know, she was wrong for her criticism and her critical analysis of his situation. Um, that's what she knew at that time, right? That's what was told, that's what was understood at that time was your ability to do better was attached to a job, was attached to work. And so many of our young people or adults now were sold that form of the American dream. Get a job. I mean, I was told that as a young person too. Get out of high school, go to college, get a job. You work. You know, if you get and there's scripture behind that. You know, a man who doesn't work doesn't eat. And so our parents and grandparents were not wrong in that teaching. It's what we understood that our ability, and I'm talking, when I say our, I'm talking about for Black folks, our
Yes.
ability to do better was attached to working for somebody. And many people are still stuck in that mode. Part of what makes this season that we're in very challenging for some is that there are still some people that believe that their wealth and that their well-being is attached to working for somebody. But what we see now is an opportunity for people to tap into their creative ability and their entrepreneurship and create wealth for themselves. And one of the things that Bigger Thomas is not taught, and one of the things that Bigger Thomas is not taught, that many of us were not taught as young people and still are not taught, is that your wealth can exist outside of working for somebody else. We've always been taught our wealth and our well being is attached to working for somebody. And so mom was not wrong. It's what she understood, it's what she knew. Bigger's challenge was he didn't buy into that, but he also didn't have a framework for how to do it differently. He saw his opportunity to do well or to do well for his family was tied up in possibly touching into a life of crime or to, you know, kind of going off on the fringe, which is something a lot of our young people face even in this present age is like, I'm not buying into the fake American dream, but I also haven't been given the tools and the information and the access to create wealth in a different way. So I think what the Native Son helps us to do is to have a conversation about traditional mindset, about what it means for Black families, Black and brown families to do well, right? That is not necessarily attached to working for somebody else. And that Bigger Thomas wasn't wrong either. He just didn't have capacity.
Mm.
One of the things that we have to do is we got to teach our young people capacity, how to create wealth, how to create wellness for their families, outside of the traditional model and mindset, the fake American dream. And I call it the fake American dream because anytime that you are told that you got to work your life for somebody else, you cannot get wealthy, because nobody you work for is going to ever allow you to make more money than what they make. And so you're always going to make less. Nobody you work for is going to allow you to make more money than what they make. So I cannot get wealthy working for somebody else. I'm only going to get as wealthy or make as much as they allow me to make, but they're not going to allow me to make more than them. So while it is Bigger's mother, if we, looking at the movie today, it's hard to watch, right? Because we live in an era where we can now tell our young people, Mama wasn't wrong. She was bought and sold into the American dream. That's what she was taught. That's what she was ingrained in. So she wasn't wrong. She didn't have capacity either. And Bigger Thomas wasn't wrong because he knew the American dream was false. He knew the American dream wasn't real. He knew what she was saying wasn't it, but he didn't have capacity. So what we really have is a mother and a son who both want the same thing, that neither one of them have capacity to go about getting it. Mama wants to do better, son wants to do better, but neither of them have the capacity. So where we are today, when we talk about our native sons, is we got to now reimagine how to give Black folks, parents and children, capacity, right, to do better, capacity to create wealth, capacity to get our families out of poverty, capacity to educate, capacity to take our dreams and make them a reality. That's the only thing both of them were missing, was capacity. And so that's what I see. That's what I draw from the story. And it's unfortunate Bigger's reality works out in a negative way for him. And so many of our sons and daughters, their realities work out in a negative way, primarily because there's no capacity. And I'm not blaming the individual, because like if you have never watched The Native Son, you should watch it. But there's also a system at play that has kept them from having capacity. What allowed me to get me and my son out of our kitchenette was God blessed me with capacity. God put people in my life who taught me capacity, taught me how to do better, taught me that there were other ways of getting my family, at the time it was just me and my son, out of a kitchenette apartment. So I understand this mother's desire. I understand her struggle. I understand her interest. She just didn't have capacity. And so that's where we are, I believe, in the 21st century, in 2020, is we got to start teaching Black folks how to have capacity so all of us can get out the kitchenette.
So all of us can get out the kitchenette. Yeah. Wow. Capacity. I love that word. Wow. God blessed me with capacity.
Absolutely.
That is awesome. God bless
and let me say this.
Yes.
White America ain't going to give you capacity.
Woo!
We have to become seekers of it. And those of us that have access, we got to start making sure we educate others. Because white America is not going to just freely give Black and brown folks the capacity that they need to get their families out of the kitchenette. Because that also means that I got to give up something so you can gain something.